Yeah. Let's talk about locusts. You know, we already had the dead fish over there in Hudson River floating. We got the plague going on. We got locusts going on. We got dead fish.
Yeah,
What's
no
next?
No bees. Killing the bees. Killing the bats.
Oh yeah, the bees. Right. I can't forget the bees. Yeah.
And people don't realize, you know, because bats were dying off
I
too.
love it.
If we didn't have bats, we wouldn't be eating because they fertilize all the wheat fields at night.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we don't realize how important nature is.
That's fertilization.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely right.
we have to stop some wars and use that money to put some, you know, build bridges and fix the farms.
Yeah. They had somebody on. They had a woman on today who basically studied gorillas and apes in Africa.
Yeah.
And she was saying that we as humans have to stop separating ourselves from nature and not understanding that we have to share the planet. And she talked about how a lot of the diseases are jumping into mankind because the way that they are herded together, like in different markets all over the world.
Right.
You know, station. So,
and that's the learning experience that I'm not convinced.
So she was saying that, you know, potential. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But you know, it's interesting what her comments were about how, you know, we have to learn how to live with nature and not just assume that, you know, the planet is just completely ours. So we have to change how we do things and how we interact. Because she's saying, you know, everything that the animals are being crowded together now. They have less space to thrive in the wild, so to speak.
That's right.
And we're encroaching on the territory.
Yeah, we're encroaching on their grounds and they're coming back at us.
Yeah.
But they're coming back at us, but it's really their territory that we're encroached on. We're developing their areas. And that's not that's not beneficial to either side. So you move out to the country and you think that you're gonna have a nice bucolic life and the whole thing, and you wind up competing with the wildlife in the country where they belong. See? And but you can't change the mindset of developers. They see a tract of land and they think there's some condos here. And that everybody wants to go there.
She spoke about.
Well, she's right. You know, we have to understand that in life, you're a peer with every other aspect of life. And like you say, you're sharing. It's not you. This whole Western idea of hierarchy.
That's true.
A top feeder. No, we're
okay.
all.
Just FYI, we're recording now, guys. Just FYI.
Okay. Do we have what kind of who do we have on? I only see you, and I can hear Polly. I'm gonna have to go to my computer because the phone doesn't give me enough information. So I'm gonna move.
And Madeline.
And I'm gonna come back.
There's a weird delay here. I'm hearing things twice and 3 times.
Ouch. Hi, Doug.
Hi. How do you do?
Hi, Louisa.
Hi. Haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
Haven't seen you.
Roberta's back in San Francisco.
I'm still in Verde Square. It's really nice here.
Good to be local there, Doug.
The sun never sets here. It's
Yeah, well, I guess last night was Manhattan Henge.
I heard it was
Yeah.
kind of a flop because of the clouds. Did anybody get to see any decent views?
I heard it was okay.
What's that?
Sounds like a motorcycle.
It is a motorcycle outside my house. Very loud one.
There's a lot of them around.
I think I'll mute so you don't hear it.
Oh, this is so weird.
Hi all. Still missing a number of committee members.
Yeah, Susan, Ira, Lolita.
Jeanette.
I don't think Lolita's on housing anymore.
Hmm.
Carmen
Really?
is signed on twice.
Okay. Has Jeanette been coming to all the meetings? I know she was at the full board. Mark, you know, I sent you that email and I'm sorry you replied to me, but I did something evil to it and it disappeared. So, yeah. So this is an old hotel on Columbus and 79th. What happened is that Mark mentioned at the full board meeting that there was affordable housing going up on 79th Street. And
Yeah,
I
it's
asked him where.
Okay,
It's
so
an
here's
SRO conversion.
I can tell you. It's building on 79th Street that was an SRO. It's been taken over by Project Open.
It's
Fine.
actually on 79th.
Yeah, it's there's a developer that's taken over and they've hired Project Open to run
Isn't
it.
Project Find?
I mean, Project Find.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Project Find. And it's, it was an SRO. They're converting it so that each room will have its own bathroom and a small kitchenette.
Am I the only one who's getting multiple feeds of the audio?
I'm hearing it as well.
I'm
not
okay.
okay on my end.
Hi, Jeanette.
I heard it just now, Mark.
I don't see anyone on twice. That's usually what causes it, but I don't know.
And the attendees is twice.
Yeah, but they can't speak
Oh,
right
God.
now.
We can't hold a meeting this way.
I just lost Zoom.
Mark and Madeline, why don't you exit and re-enter because I am not having a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds okay on my side too.
Okay. The problem is all right, here's what we're gonna do.
Make me host and then
I'm
exit.
gonna make Melissa the host. Because if I exit,
Yeah, everybody else will drop off.
Great. Love the power. All right.
Okay.
Just
We
Got
have everyone
Madeline.
except Susan and Lolita.
Yeah, let's let Madeline and Mark get
What-
that going.
Yeah.
I like the haircut, so now I'm not wearing that silly baseball cap anymore. I'm tantalized wearing it at every meeting, so.
What's the
Well,
beeping I'm hearing from someone?
Like an answering machine or something.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know.
Someone having a chirping going on.
you could wear it until pandemic is over. Think about that.
The hat? Oh,
Rather of a haircut, I'm sure.
I almost thought I was going to just grow out my hair, and it became very impractical. But of course, I bought a clipper to do it myself. And the day the clipper came, the hair salon said they were going to reopen. So now I have a clipper, which I haven't used.
Well, you might need it this winter, so
Yes,
hopefully not, but you know.
Thank you, Melissa.
in between the haircuts.
Just enjoy the lull right now, but yeah. I guess Mark's having problems.
Oh.
I'll give him another minute and then
It's not.
Ooh.
Sorry, that was me.
okay, I think let's just get started and Mark will join us. So I don't know, the agenda never got posted, I think, which is my bad.
It's to look at the DNS or what we're supposed to do.
Right, so we wanted to look at the DNS and budget priorities, one, and then two, talk about what we want to be doing in our committee meetings, especially, well, I guess starting come September. I feel like it's kind of new community board year. And I think we want to embed into both of those discussions a lot of thoughts about weaving NYCHA and the needs of residents into our work. So, so I think let's start with the DNS and budget priorities, and we can look at what we did last year, but I think, you know, for context, Sadia sent out that memo that sort of asked us all to be a little bit more thoughtful about how we compile them this year with so little city money likely available next year. And to sort of really think through what should float to the top of our list. And, you know, just based on our committee, to me, it would seem the needs of NYCHA, both capital and operating in our district, would be a major priority. And sorry, I'm just reading a message from Larry. Larry Wood from the SRO Law Project also suggested like rental assistance or eviction prevention funding for people who are in rental housing in our district, which agree, it's a need. But I think overall we need to talk about like, what do we want to prioritize? Are they like big asks that are sort of like larger policy issues, or are they more concrete things that are actually in our district that we think we could maybe get, as opposed to being more of a coalition of voices? And, you know, I'd like to hear what everyone's thoughts are on like what is the right scale of ask to be targeting. And Louisa, do you want to jump in?
Well, I have the two thoughts that I
Okay.
have.
I'm having trouble hearing you. It's crackling. I don't know if anyone else has that.
You're crackling, Louisa. Am I crackling?
No.
Yes. That's why I was muted, but I could still hear it.
Yeah, you're certainly crackling bad, but am I crackling for everybody?
Not for
Maybe
me.
it's me. Maybe it's me. Okay. I just wanted to talk about for a
Oh,
second
okay.
what the DNS is?
Okay, great.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, because I looked at that list that Cindy sent around and everything that CB7 proposed to the city. And there were 60 odd items. And of them, housing there were 5 of them for housing. And that included the playground and the senior center at Frederick Douglass. So my first question is, why is housing so low on the totem pole? There's a lot for repairs. All of this is necessary. A lot about social services. And there was just repairs for nature. There was the idea about the skilled trades and apprentices for nature. And other than that, we weren't on the list at all. And so I think also we should advocate more for being included. We are as important as Bluestone Steps in Riverside Park. That's all I want to say.
Agree. I think it's going to be a very different discussion this year, if I can just guess.
I think so also, but it's also that housing is a very large component of what the need for good housing is a very large component of what is happening this year.
But what is going to be the priorities of the governor and the mayor? Is it small businesses or housing? So that's what we have to look at also. What are going to be their main priorities?
But do we have to say it is small businesses? I mean, does that mean that we are not going to advocate for better housing and rent
I think,
supports?
Louisa, if I may, I think that it's a tactical issue. And I think that where Melissa started is where we should be. And I think as a committee, as a board, at least our relation as a committee to the board, we should stay focused, and we should stay focused on NYCHA. We know the state and the city politics, and it is an underlying political issue. Who's going to get whatever's available? But I think as a community board, we have to outline and make the arguments for the different components of support for NYCHA and the different projects and the playgrounds and the senior citizen centers, all related to NYCHA. And I think we should not let up on that. And I think that when the local elected officials, Helen and the Levine and all of them, they see the additional arguments and the pressure that we're applying, I think it helps them in making their cases. But I don't think that we get into a discussion as whether we should support more for NYCHA or small businesses. No, absolutely not. I think as a housing committee, we're dealing with housing, and that's our focus. And it's the single-mindedness of our argument and our attack. And then, of course, there are different elements of housing, but the priority, if we're going to exert our energy effectively, has to be in NYCHA, because that is the ongoing issue. That's the behemoth. That's the big one. That's what I call the black swan in housing in the city of New York, okay? And so I think that we should not take into account these other considerations that are very important, but they're not our work. Our work is housing, and in the community, in the city of New York, it's NYCHA, because NYCHA is most vulnerable. I have a much more cynical view of the politics of NYCHA than a lot of people, even people who are suffering. You know, I know these bastards, and I know what plan, and I'm a realtor, so I know what the real estate interest, how it looks at NYCHA, okay? And of course, I'm on the wrong side of real estate always, but I think that we mustn't lose sight of what we're charged to do. That's my comment on that. I have another comment on the response to your the DNS memo you sent out. I made a comment of what I would like to add with respect to another sector the Mitchell-Lama, which I know a lot about, but I'd like to
Can you
stay,
tell us
I'd like to
where-
stay on the
Getting
NYCHA,
into that,
I'd like to stay on the NYCHA theme.
Yeah, let's hold on for a second. I just want to say a few things just for like run of meeting. I understand there are some NYCHA TA presidents watching. I would love to hear from them. I just first want us to sort of establish what our scope is right now of like what we're looking to drill down on. And then I want to get input. I just don't know if it'll be constructive if we just like all start speaking without knowing what we're working towards. And just again, to assert my initial question, it's sort of, do we want to focus on like a larger scale asks or smaller asks that are more specific to our district? So just again, to pose that, and I want to hear what people have to say about it. And I think, Jeanette, you wanted to speak. Why don't you go ahead, and then Roberta.
Yeah, I would, from my experience, the district needs statements are a little bit of a procedure that city agencies and OMB have to go through. But the easiest thing is when a community board gives a big rambling discussion and the agency's response can be, okay, talk to this guy, talk to that guy. Okay, we're in agreement, but we don't have funds for that right now. I like the way that we wrote everything last year, but I think within that, we should have a specific discrete ask. And I would just say the Douglas Playground, I've put that on in the last 3 or 4 years and got criticized a lot because I'm usually not in Parks meetings, and Parks has its list of things and I bring it up and people see it as a Parks item. However, if you look at NYCHA properties, how they originally were developed, and I don't know about, I'd be curious to hear from the NYCHA presidents here, but I know, for instance, in the ones in Queens, they constantly talk about the surroundings and no longer having community centers and the playgrounds being run down and such. The Douglas Playground for the past 20 years has not really been renovated other than the pool, while other playgrounds have been renovated more than once. And I think if our community board is going to put its money where its mouth is and saying that we're looking at a fair, equitable approach to improving our public environment, that playground should be #1 on our list. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a housing item, but I do think it does relate to housing. But I would argue that we have our preamble as we had last year, but we really try to focus on 1 or 2 key items for capital and 1 or 2 key items for operational. Thanks.
Roberta?
Okay, Jeanette, I think procedurally, the Housing Committee should should send a recommendation to the Park Committee that particular playground is our #1 priority and that we'd like Parks to consider that. Because I think they're always upset that outsiders come in and suggest that. That would be my first suggestion. The second thing I wanted to say is housing, affordable housing has always been our #1 issue since I've been back on the. And I think our preamble last year was great. And I agree we should pick 1 or 2 things that we feel could be funded. But I think part of our DNS goes to the city agency. Part of it goes up on our website and is read by the community and is a guiding principle for us in our actions throughout the year. So I think we have to focus on both of those.
That's helpful. Okay, any other kind of overarching thoughts before I would like to drill down on like the NYCHA budget priorities piece of it and hear
Get
from
my hand raised up.
Sorry, go ahead.
I agree that the playgrounds need to be restored or rebuilt or whatever the wording you want to use. But with the COVID-19, NYCHA is looking to increase revenues. They're not, I'm not going to speak for them, but I just feel they're not interested in rebuilding or making Douglas prettier, if you will, for lack of a better word. They looking to generate funds. And I think what we need to focus on, I mean, not about the DNS, but I think we need to focus on what NYCHA is going to do, because whatever we decide, and I guarantee this by dealing with NYCHA, it doesn't matter So I think we got to find something like Robert was saying, we have to find something more concrete, more meat on the table in order for them to listen to us. But until then, we need to have something more. They don't care anything about the playground. We got $250 million where they from what is that? Mark, help me here. What's the participatory budgeting? They got that money and spent it for something else. So what I'm saying is we have to pin them down, or they haven't even made any plans yet. We don't even know what the budget is for New York State yet, or New York City. So to target playgrounds, we have to see where the monies lie. We just can't go blindly into saying we need them to do this or do that. So we have to figure out what we can do right now. I think that's most important.
Okay, I'd like to add something to the conversation. This is Polly Spain speaking, okay? So basically, the mayor has allocated $150 million, right, for broadband expansion within NYCHA developments throughout New York City. So that's something that I feel should be referred to in the DNS statement. In addition to that, I just put a comment in the chat about the $14 million that HPD is holding, okay? And I do feel that part of that statement should include a statement that that money should be allocated to the NYCHA developments here on the Upper West Side to improve conditions as far as capital, because as the former chair of the Housing Committee, we always spoke about repairs all the time. We always spoke about upgrades, etc. But whatever happens downtown with the agencies, nothing has ever came to fruition. Now it's an opportune time because the money is available through the mayor's office and because of the money that Collegiate had allocated back in 2015 for affordable housing. And most of that money went to Wishfish. So I do not understand why none of that money was allocated to any of the NYCHA developments here on the Upper West Side. So I'd like to see something to that effect in the DNS statement.
Yeah, Mark, can you just speak to the status of the money for a second?
Sure, and some of this is to be followed up on for sure. But the collegiate money was, as I understand it, to build or preserve, meaning to retain affordable housing that would otherwise become market rate. And there's no threat or no proposal to turn NYCHA housing into market rate housing such that that money would qualify. So while I love the idea of taking any or all of that money and using it productively, especially productively in our district, I don't know that as currently configured that it would qualify. Now, nothing's to say that we couldn't request that the conditions that are attached to that funding be changed. I'm not certain if there is a procedure to do that. I don't know if Roberta has ever considered that or talked to anybody about that. But my initial inquiry into this was that NYCHA doesn't qualify because it's not either currently or potentially market rate housing.
I can answer.
Well, I like to intervene because there's a building down the block from me that is federally subsidized. It's not market rate housing called Independent House that's managed by Wishfish now. So we are federally funded. So they're getting the same funding stream as NYCHA. So if they qualify and they're a federally funded entity, then we should be able to qualify too. So that needs to be looked into.
And I'm glad to look into it, Polly. The issue though is that Independence House is not the recipient, as I understand it, of that collegiate money. It's the 108th Street development, which is senior supportive housing. Anyway, sorry, Roberta, go ahead.
So the collegiate money was the Riverside South development had to build a certain number of affordable units. And at the time that a swap was made from to put the collegiate building into the last building on Riverside South, that because it was a school, they weren't going to build affordable housing. It had to be new affordable housing. It had to go for new affordable housing. So a deal was made with the agreement of CB7 that the restrictive deck for Riverside South could be amended. Collegiate could put $50 million into a fund that would go for new affordable housing. It was not supposed to be existing housing, it was supposed to be new affordable housing. And so we have to go back and look at the restrictive deck and see if there are any loopholes.
Not
I
to,
want to ask,
sorry, hold on.
sorry, okay.
I don't want to invalidate this discussion because it is very important, but it is also a bit apart from what our goal is here tonight, which is to nail down our budget priorities. And I am to the second piece of our agenda tonight. I'm very open to making this a whole meeting, like in September. I think that could be a great use of our time, or delving into it more. But again, I do want to try to stick to our purpose.
Melissa, we'd also have to do research ahead of that meeting, so we need to know.
Totally acknowledge that, agree. Sorry, Ira, I cut you off.
Okay. Roberta's much more versed in this than I think any of the rest of us. But I remember having a conversation with any number of people before I had any involvement with 108th Street and not any coming after 108th Street. But the original building that was supposed to go where Collegiate was supposed to go was supposed to be a seniors building. And that's what was lost. And there was no site for it. So the intent was to replace that senior building, which was really intended, correct me if I'm right, Roberta, it was intended to have a supportive element.
No. I think we should hold this until
Okay.
September, when we can come in with some real facts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's baked into 108th
Let's
Street.
table it until we have facts rather than memories.
Okay.
Okay. I want to hear from some people who are here as attendees. Cynthia and Carmen. Why don't we start with Carmen? Carmen?
How you doing?
There you go. Hi.
Hi. We've been working very hard with now because of the money that's being allocated. I have been working diligently with community engagement, the DA's office, 24th precinct, to bring in a lot of not only revenue but programs in here. The problem we're seeing is that even though we have the community space over there of that school, Douglas, most of our children and most of our people have no access to that. Two is that I really believe if Community Board 7 really wants to bite into this, you should invite the TAs to the table so that we can give you firsthand what it is that we really need. We're the ones on the ground. We're the ones that know what we need.
Okay.
And we have renovated the park that we have renovated. I brought in $500 million and we had our park renovated in the front here. Okay, it's been a long time, but I brought $500 million and had it made. And so while we do need these parks redone, they opened these parks not so long ago while it was closed for COVID, but they did no cleaning. They did no sanitizing in any of these parks that are open at this point. That's a problem. That's really what we really need to be looking at. Opening the parks for these kids, and we got COVID all over the place, but you cannot sanitize the parks. So there are a lot of issues that are going on that we really need to look at. What I am asking you is that if you guys can have an open policy for the tenants to sit down with you when you are making these type of decisions, because most of us are hands-on all day long. And it's only right if people are making decisions for our developments, we need to be there.
Agree, Carmen. I'm happy to work with Mark to make a more formalized structure where we have some kind of periodic meeting. I'm happy for you guys to join every housing committee meeting. I'm, whatever we think is the best format. But of course, your voices are important because you represent so many of our constituents.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about 4,000 residents and plus some, because, I'm one that whenever any development calls me, I'll go. So we are all working together, and it's only right that we sit at that table and be respected as such because we're the ones on the ground, and anything that hits Douglas hits me. I've had 2 deaths so far, 2 deaths. We got 2 grieving parents here today, 2 sets. There's a lot going on. I have the Crips, I have the Crips, and I have the Bloods, okay? People are hurting. Our children are dying. There's so much more to this than you can see. That's why I'm asking you, make sure you have an open policy for the TA presidents. Madeline does not support us. Now, let me let you know that right now, and I hope she's on.
I don't want anyone
Madeline
attacking
doesn't speak
committee
for us.
members, please.
She doesn't. She won't come and join us. She won't come and help her neighbor. I've asked her. Her thing is personal. So you need to make sure, please, there is a board here that works. Include us.
Okay, we will do our best to include, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. We will include you, but please, let's not bring any personal animus to.
No, I'm just letting you know what the reality is. And that's the reality. She sits
Okay,
on that board and is supposed to be
I'm
representing.
going to jump in
She's
here,
not representing
Carmen,
us.
thank you. I'm going to
You're
jump in
welcome.
here because I want to reinforce what Melissa said. There's a lot of good work that needs to get done. And so let's focus on the right path forward, please.
That sounds good to me.
That's great. And I see that there are others of your colleagues and other TAs that are here, and perhaps we can hear from them as well. There's plenty to do, and it sounds like Melissa and Louisa are working toward a very sensible approach. The only other thing I wanted, while I've interrupted, the only other thing I want to make sure I say is that there was a couple of references to decisions being made. And sadly, Community Board 7 doesn't make decisions, we make recommendations. I am delighted to have our recommendations be well informed by those folks who everybody who has a stake in this, and I think we all have a stake in this, to make sure that all of our neighbors are well treated and well cared for. So let's move forward on that basis, and I will now stop interrupting and give it back to the co-chairs of the committee.
Cynthia, did you want to, I think you were raising your hand or in the chat.
It's Race, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thank you. The reason why we have so many presidents on tonight is that I've been working with Mark to try to get our presidents involved. We have felt slighted by CB7. We have felt that you don't listen to our voices. And yes, we are hands-on. We are on the ground 24/7, 7 days a week. Nobody knows our developments like we do. And while you make recommendations, you have PAC going on at Wise Towers currently during COVID, which should not be happening. Nobody has asked any resident at Wise Towers what are they going through during PAC renovations at Wise. You have not reached out to the TA president, Ernesto Cabrera, at Wise Towers to ask him what have they been dealt with. They have been harassed. They have had the new management knock on doors and try to force residents into signing new leases during COVID. There's a lot going on that CB7 is not aware of. So while you say you make recommendations, before you make them, you need to hear both sides of the coin, because there is a lot going on. And we do want to be involved. We do want to be heard. We do want to, if it's on a Zoom meeting or at the table, we do want to let you know exactly what we've been doing. There's a lot of positive things we do. We feed our tenants all the time. We give out sanitizers all the time. And while I am guarded as to say what I want to say, CB7 should not be reprimanding me on the phone or be permitted to reprimand me on who I should give my sanitizers to, since you don't want us talking about your board members. Your board members have no right interfering with my work. So there's two sides to each of it. And if you're unaware of it, Mark knows what I'm talking about. All right, you've had a housing night shift task force for years now, and you don't even have a database set up where you know every single president in every development. There are 45 buildings alone. Wise. There are 8 presidents. Nobody over there knows all 8 of us, or our emails, or our phone numbers. As the chairwoman of the task force, that should have been done years ago, Madeline. Years ago. So you need to work together with us. We're stronger in numbers.
than separating us. Stop isolating us, start working with us.
I hear you. I appreciate the feedback, and I think there's some really helpful, concrete stuff we can be doing on that note. Like you said, making sure we're in more constant contact with the TA leaders, making sure we know all of them. You know, I definitely feel like that's something I have not done well. I have only met, you know, a few of the leaders so far, and appreciate that feedback. And to, you know, bring us back to our first question and request. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. Are there any things in your, hold on, I'm gonna mute everyone.
In the process of community rooms renovated, and we've done that without any help from CB7. We've taken initiative to do that all on our own.
That's right.
Okay, so while you're deciding what to do with money, we've already had money allocated to having our community rooms. We've had floods in them. We've had floors collapse, ceilings collapse in our community rooms. And we have been working with our elected officials and the heads at NYCHA to get our rooms renovated. And we did that without asking anyone for a penny.
Just again, I guess to clarify on the district needs statement and budget priorities, you know, we don't have any money to allocate ourselves. It's just how we basically tell the city agencies what we think they need to prioritize in our district. And also they can be used as a tool to push elected officials occasionally to also help fund things with whatever discretionary funding they have.
Parity funding, but the participatory funds, when they get designated to playgrounds, for instance, Wise Towers, was designated, I think, in 2018. But the money actually doesn't happen that year. It happens years down the line. Now that Wise Towers is going through PACT, the money that was allocated for the playgrounds, Mr. Cabrera has asked repeatedly, what's going to happen to that money? Because now that you have PACT coming in and they're redoing the playgrounds, what happened to the money that was allocated to the playgrounds for Wise Towers? No one has an answer to that. So it would be very helpful if CB7 wrote a letter to Helen asking her what's going to happen to the previous money that was allocated for playgrounds, which now is at a stalemate because they're going through the PAC progress and money from HUD is being allocated for new playgrounds.
Happy to do that, or at least maybe even just speak to Helen about it without a letter, and then decide if that's the best way to get a response from NYCHA.
Okay.
In terms of Wise Towers, if you had to name some capital need, I guess, I don't know, with PACT going on, it's harder to think through like how to add something to our budget priorities. So I'll ask more broadly to tenants and tenant leaders on the call. If there are concrete things in the development that you think could be improved, we would love to just have anyone jump in and provide some
ideas. Cameras. We need all cameras up and functioning. The majority of the developments already have cameras, but the problem is when we had a shooting just the other day. When you ask NYCHA to go to the cameras and pull up the footage, management won't pull up the footage. And in the beginning, when the federal aid made the concessions and the agreements with these cameras, one of the agreements is that the first thing every morning, NYCHA management would pull up the cameras and review them. And they have not done that since that agreement was made.
So is the problem that the cameras are not working, or that the footage is not reviewed, or is it?
They're not reviewed.
Okay.
They're not reviewed at all. People get attacked in the elevators. People are getting shot outside. And there's no accountability from the management office to review the cameras. They claim they're too busy to wind back footage. Well, the agreement was made, Polly knows the exact date, that the agreement was made with the federal aid that they all decided cameras would be reviewed every morning, and it has not happened.
That happened in 2014.
Another thing is the entrance doors. because they only did half entrance doors, especially here in Douglas. And so we would like that allocated to the rest of the doors, the entrance doors that need to be put up, because crime is rapid, right? We have a lot of crime between different developments. Now we have Pleasant Avenue coming down this way, which is, you know, it's development against development. And so in order for my seniors to be safe, we need to finish the rest of the doors and get them done.
So is it that some of the buildings didn't have their doors done, or they were done
They
incompletely?
ran out of money.
Okay, so some buildings were never done, is that right?
Right.
Okay, that's helpful and definitely something we can,
That's something we can ask for easily.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's,
It's a very
To be clear,
concrete thing.
to make sure I got it correctly, guys, I'm making a couple of notes here myself too. Are these the front doors downstairs, like the main entrance doors?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, yes, definitely.
okay.
The new ones are very good too. So it's not easy for them to get
Right.
access.
So I just want to interject because the Wasura building, site A, B, and C, also are in need of new front entrances as well. Okay, so all of the NYCHA, again, sites here on the Upper West Side need capital
Exactly.
renovation of their front entrances and security.
Sorry, which buildings were those again?
The Wasuras, site A, B, and C. I can give you the addresses.
Okay, that would be great.
And I can always
Alright.
forward it too. If you need it, I'll forward it.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
That'd be great.
So
Okay.
probably we'll get together and we'll do it. Okay.
Okay, Carmen. Okay.
Cynthia.
Okay, I don't want to neglect any other attendees. If anyone else has something that they would like to put forward, specifically on the NYCHA section of the DNS and district needs statement, you can indicate by raising your little digital blue hand. Sorry, I'm just checking the chat if there's anything we need to.
I have a quick question, Melissa, if I may.
Yeah.
Just because I'm also jotting this in Wise Towers, we're talking the hardware, the cameras are functioning, but the tapes are not being reviewed.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no need for
Wise
additional
Towers,
cameras.
Wise Towers consists of 4 buildings. It's Wise Towers, 589, 201 West 93rd, 74 West 92nd, 54 West 94th Street, 120 West 94th Street.
Right.
All have cameras.
Okay, so it would. All right, so we're not looking for capital to install or repair cameras. It's the reviewing of the tapes, and I'm assuming that PSA or NYPD have an incident, they get access, but the management is not reviewing it daily as they promised.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, and then the second part, the front doors, you're saying that they are swinging open, there's no security, they're just open, free and open.
Yes, they're constantly being vandalized. Most of the doors are old. They're over 20 years of age. So really, there's no real security. They can be jammed constantly. Even with the new doors, they're constantly vandalized all the time. So, that needs to be addressed with capital funds, okay, to put in secured entry doors to the buildings.
If the doors at the front are unsecured, that sounds like an emergent issue, not even just.
It is an emergency.
It's a violation of the right of habitability and the warranty of the right of habitability and everything else. If you have open doors, that sounds like that's not even a DNS statement. That's an emergency that has to be fixed.
Yeah, but it's a DNS because they're constantly broken and vandalized, and all right, there's no response to repair them. They're supposed to be repaired within 24 hours. They're not being repaired.
Okay, understood.
May I interject for a second, especially on these doors, because we have a lot of the problems with the entrance doors also. But the vandalism that's happening, even with the new doors, that's why I'm surprised that Cynthia can't get that footage. Because when something is broken, I go to the cameras. I make sure that my manager pulls that up. The trick to this is you have to remember, you have to find out from what time to what time that door was vandalized. Go to management, ask that for that footage.
They won't.
Right? And only you and the manager can see that footage. And
We
then
have-
we call PSA 6 in. I mean, for me, I can't talk about anybody else, but I can talk about me.
Unfortunately, at WISE, the
Mhm.
management does not communicate with the presidents. WISE is being used as a stepping stone for promotions. We have gone through 6 managers in 2 years, 6 superintendents in 2 years, 4 assistant superintendents in 2 years. This is the stepping stone for promotion. Everybody comes in with an agenda and nobody wants to listen to us. We have told them that when they leave, we still stay here with the same existing problems that we've had for decades because nobody wants to address them. And like I said, when Polly said in 2014, it was agreed upon that every morning they would go through the footage. Nobody has adhered to that rule since 2014. And they blatantly ignore us. Blatantly. Every time I write a letter, I have to go all the way up the chain to the general manager, Vito Musticilino, before I get a response because management feels that we are beneath them and they don't have to answer to us. And it's not just me, it's all 8 presidents.
So I have a question. Since this is a district needs statement, are we requesting capital dollars to fix the doors? Or, and I believe we did this a couple of years ago, we included it. Or should we instead be requesting operational funds to have like doormen there or something that helps prevent these doors from being constantly broken?
That would be good. Because the money that they're spending on getting these doors fixed over and over is horrible. So it leaves us to, and you're taking away money that we can use for something else instead of fixing these doors over and over and over and over. That makes no sense. I like exactly what you said, Janet. We should do that.
I mean, we
Because we
could do
have to-
both.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, obviously it does require capital to actually fix. I don't know, like, I don't know if having more security staff would address the camera problem too. I don't know if it's just like their staff's fine, they just don't do their jobs, or maybe it's both, but we could definitely think about putting in
Security.
an expense item for the personnel. Sorry, I interrupted Helen.
Staff.
I would just add to that though. I would just add to that, instead of approaching this as just a security issue, you know, the right thing might be more to have like a doorman service there in these buildings rather than some security cameras and a punitive way.
Yeah.
My understanding is that people forget their keys or they're letting somebody in who doesn't have a key.
Exactly.
And they're not, you know, they're forcing the door open after it's been fixed. So it might be nice to take a new approach to this and not just be, oh, it's a security issue. It needs more secure. I mean, I think security cameras are a good thing, but it might be nice to approach it where it's not just, oh, we need to punish those who are breaking the doors down.
Okay, so like front entrance coverage, we could say something
Yes.
not as, yeah. I agree that it's better.
Someone who's there to
framing.
help people.
Yeah. So I saw someone in the chat mention elevators. I'm assuming that's sorry, Robert, 1 second. I just want to hear from anyone on the call who wants to speak to any buildings in particular that have elevators that are constantly broken. And if we could get an address and we could include it as a capital item.
Well, elevators are always being vandalized. To tell you the truth, I really think they love the overtime. I believe they fix it for an hour or two and they have to come back. That's just me though, right? Because for you to come and fix an elevator today and it's broken 4 hours later to me is a gimmick, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what's really happening with the elevators. These new elevators that we have are a little harder to vandalize. But if you keep the door open, it automatically shuts down. So then it'll lock because these are new. Of course, it's on this timer, and everything is digital. So if they hold the door open, like they just hold it open, it will shut down.
I don't know I mean, that's a bad elevator design issue. I definitely like
Yes,
if
it
they
is.
shut down. I don't know what to say that would fix it. Sorry, Robert, you wanted to speak, and I also see Mark Victor wants to speak. Although Polly, I don't see him listed.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
he's saying that no one can see him or hear him, so I'm
Oh.
asking him if he's on video.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't see him either. He's not on my list of attendees or panelists. Is he
Okay.
under a different name?
I'll find out.
Okay, thanks. Let me know. Meanwhile, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, sorry,
All
Robert.
right, this would be a reasonable ask, I think. And we should know that one of the trends in private housing is what we call virtual.
Oh, you're saying the door attendant or coverage idea?
Virtual, but you see one of the points that Polly was making and that was made during the meeting with the RPA and all of that, it's been made for a long time, is the local.
Wait, can you guys hear him? No, Robert, you froze.
We can't hear you.
Well, we can return to Robert when he unfreezes.
Yeah, Victor's saying he could see and hear us, but we can't see or hear him.
And he's on
Polly,
Zoom.
is he is he watching on YouTube instead of on Zoom? That might be.
Oh, okay.
No, Robert, still.
Okay, the question seems to me is, what ideas do people have to stop the vandalism of elevators? I mean, we can talk about it, we've been talking about it forever, but I'm not sure what to do. And even if we do have security cameras in there,
Not reviewed, right?
do people look at them and what are even if they see somebody, what happens?
Well, I look at footage. I look at footage all the time. I go if there's some because we have cameras in our elevators. So if there's something that happens to the in the elevator or something with the elevator, I make sure I go down to watch that footage to see from what time, if I have the right time, the timing it was done.
So the problem is the repairs.
No, actually, the problem is our residents. Actually, residents hold it, and once they hold it, it will lock, and you can't do that. These are new, different elevators. These are not the old elevators. They will shut down in a minute. And so I've been putting out a lot of flyers telling them to stop holding the elevators. It's gotten a lot better for us in Douglas when it comes to the elevator. Actually, they do break down. And so they do come and fix them in an emergency because everybody calls me, so they'll come. But as far as vandalism, no, they just hold up, they just hold it. And because it's on a timer or whichever way they have it, right? It automatically will shut down.
Okay, but what can we do about this? I'm not sure listening to you.
Talk to the managers of each development and have them look at the footage.
My signal.
And then you can tell who's doing it.
Robert.
My signal dropped, so did I lose my place?
Yeah,
go ahead, baby. I'm sorry.
We heard virtual doormen and then.
Yeah, so my signal fell. And that is the trend, and that is very manageable. And it fits in perfectly into the desire that we have heard from NYCHA leaders to have local management of their developments. It is an ask. We can ask for startup funds to get this sort of thing going. We might even start with an experimental site, whichever one the leaders decide would be the best place to set this sort of thing up, because there's the installation process and all of that. And it is very successful in private housing. I know, Doug, you're mostly commercial, but in the housing that I'm doing, and it's, of course, it's the higher end now, but it is the trend where it starts at the top and it proves itself, and it's very, very efficient. And it might be easier to ask for this sort of support than to ask for personnel support. The thing with this support is that it's really reliable because you can have a relay. If Cynthia is not available, Polly's available. If Polly's not available, Madam is available. Quinones is available. And they all have access. Two, you don't even have to leave your apartment.
Yeah, amen.
So that that would be an ask that is perfectly doable. I don't know what the cost is. It's not a prohibitive cost, given the way you would balance it, the cost and the benefits and the whole thing. So that's my comment on the security. And I think that it's doing things as usual is it's not gonna improve anything. We have to go a different way, and this is a different way. Now, on one other note, if I may, and then I'll keep quiet. We're talking about that 14 million being held by HPD for NYCHA. It's not an ask, but it's something that we could help Helen get out of HPD for NYCHA in this district. And we're talking about Amsterdam, Douglas, Weiss, massive, massive units. And that $14 million, if it belongs to NYCHA, it belongs to NYCHA. So then tell us, we could help, I think, extract that out of HPD.
I want to table this until we're all more informed. And I also want it to be an open debate over what the right thing to do is in terms of honoring a previous agreement and what, we see as important projects in our community, and not just, come in with a solution at the beginning of the meeting. I want us to actually discuss the funding. But again, let's talk about it in September.
Okay, the virtual, so my thing is the virtual.
Yeah, sorry. And I wanted to speak on that. Sharon Austin wrote, she's a Douglas House resident. She didn't think it's realistic to have a doorman, that it could actually make things worse. Sometimes it's existing residents and their family members that create part of the problem, and putting a physical doorman could create additional unnecessary risks. So I actually thought that sort of shored up your argument for a virtual doorman. So I wanted to just.
I appreciate that. And then if what Quinones is saying is, of course, it's accurate, it's figure of speech. If we have Bloods and Crips, in the house, I don't want to put a doorman there. Really don't. No.
Actually, Robert, I wanted to piggyback off of that because Occupy NYCHA is looking into resident management. We are incorporated, and we are definitely looking into resident management. It's something that we should do, and it's something that in our regulation says we can. And so we're working very hard on that end with the CEO and Vito Masachel and Cynthia, of course.
Well, we would love to hear more about both the concept and if any plans for resident management. We can
send you the paperwork. We can send you some paperwork so you can see what we're doing. It's different developments from Queens to the East Side. We've got a total of maybe 10 presidents that are actually on board. And so we're just getting the paperwork final and making sure we have all our T's and I's dotted. Awesome. But it's something that we've been talking about now for a year. So we are definitely doing it. Occupy NYCHA is doing it. So we have about 10 presidents so far that want to do resident management.
Okay, so I just want to talk about virtual doorman. We put in the federal aid back in 2011. We put in a virtual doorman system in partnership with a company called Digital Divide. That's why I mentioned the $150 million broadband that the city is allocated to NYCHA residents. So we were one of the first locations in Manhattan, along with the support of Gail Brewer when she was a city councilwoman, to get funding so that we could put in our own virtual doorman system. Okay. At that time, it was $5,000. All right. So since 2011, we've had a system, but of course we need funding for that. So if you want to mention that in the DNS statement, that would be great. That we need more funding to expand the virtual program that was already implemented in 2011. We are able to see on our phone any kind of digital device, you know, who's entering, coming into the building. Okay. It doesn't cost $10,000, $100,000. It was $5,000. We have our own website. If you want to, go to our website, federal8.org, okay? And you can see. But the thing is, we need funding. And that's what we lack. So if you can put that in the DNS statement, you know, that would be great to expand our virtual program that we already have in place, where we actually certified residents to maintain, install their own system. So it's not a concept that's foreign to us, but we just don't have funding on a regular basis to continue to support it. You know, I myself have taken money and other TA presidents as well out of our own pockets to keep the system up and running. That's what we do as TA presidents.
That's right.
Right. I mean, that's really helpful to have a concrete example that we can say expand on, as opposed to some nebulous idea. To return to some other district need priorities or budget priorities, in terms of COVID and safety and food security, are there still gaps in like what is being provided versus what is actually needed? Is there anything you could think of that we could be helpful in requesting that could help the developments prepare for in case things get really bad again or continue to be bad, since they are sort of still very bad on NYCHA campuses in terms of COVID?
My opinion is you definitely need to focus on sanitization and cleaning. That is an area that's always lacking, and that's very important. You know, in light of COVID, I know we mentioned earlier, especially Cynthia with the brownstones, they do not have elevators, they have stairs where there isn't any cleaning going on. So money does need to be allocated to hire individuals, you know, and I would like to see residents being hired to clean their own locations. To me, that makes more sense because they know the buildings and they know the sites, instead of bringing an outside entity that doesn't live there and that doesn't care. I would like to see money allocated for some kind of program, especially for the youth, all right, to be engaged, whereupon this way they can clean their own buildings after they've gotten training, of course. But I do feel that that's a direction that we should go in.
I like that. Any other thoughts on COVID needs?
As the president of the Brownstones, and because we have to walk up, we have had to rely on Alliance Company to come and do our handrails, which of course they do not do. So we have already been cleaning our buildings on our own. We have already been cleaning our floors on our own. Thankfully, Goddard was grateful enough to give me their youth workers, because they were not laying them off, they were keeping them on staff, and they lent them out to me to help me go door to door and give sanitizers and masks and gloves to all my residents. So there is, you know, many ways we can implement the youth. Goddard is one of them, okay, where we could get our guys up in teams to clean our own floors. NYCHA workers have not mopped any of the buildings in 4 months. None of our buildings have been mopped by a NYCHA staff in over 4 months. So if we don't do it, they don't get done.
Sorry, Mark mentioned this a little while ago. If Larry Wood is still here, I want to also give him a chance to weigh in. I don't know, Larry, I'll unmute you if you have anything to add to the discussion here on budget, NYCHA specifically, affordable housing.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thank you, guys. Nice to see everyone, by the way. Actually, it's interesting. Starting back in December or January, God had started facilitating meetings of the federal 8. So it's been really interesting meeting with my neighbors and folks I've known for many years in some respects. And the work that they've done to really help organize themselves and one another. In that regard, we were talking about the cameras and also their ability to access the footage, because this issue about alliance and the adequacy of the cleaning has repeatedly come up, and being able to pull the footage to see if the work is actually being done would be very helpful. I understood from what Cynthia has told me in the past, management's supposed to check the cameras to see that they're functioning every day, not necessarily to go through every minute of footage to see if something happened, but to make sure the cameras have been actually recording appropriately. So if they're needed to monitor a cleaning or to monitor a door being broken or vandalism or a crime, we know that they're actually functioning, and then the police would have access to them when appropriate. So just continuing to hear from the neighbors, hear from the NYCHA residents, their needs is so critical. I'm glad you put that out there, Melissa. I know the intent is there. It's just a willingness and creating the space to get that concrete feedback on an ongoing basis. Great group of leaders supporting one another. And with the privatization changes through the RAD conversions that are going on, it's just more need for communication. And then one thing I just want to close with, there's a huge undercount right now in the census. And if you look at the census tract, and particularly the census tract that contain the NYCHA housing, we have a big undercount, and that's a huge problem for funding and for political power down the road. So that's something we have to work on between now and October 31st when the census wraps up.
Thanks for bringing that up.
So thank you for the opportunity to add 2 cents.
Yeah, of course. Always love hearing from you. Okay. If any other attendees have something that they want us to add into the district needs statement we haven't touched on, again, you can raise your hand. We're always happy to hear from you guys. I guess beyond NYCHA, are there other housing things we want to make sure we touch on? Someone mentioned eviction assistance early on. My concern with that is that it's like one of those really big nebulous big ticket items. So I don't want to say I guess that's my opinion, that maybe it's not worth including because it's like too big, but would love other people's input on whether some kind of eviction prevention assistance, whether it's kind of like a one-shot deal thing or rental assistance, if it's something we'd want to include.
Okay. My worry about this is that this is for 2022.
Yes.
And well, I guess the eviction problem would still be here, but we really have to consider that this is really long-term requests, and we should perhaps separate them out from what we need to do now. And what we do now in terms of evictions, et cetera, is maybe resolutions and passing them. We could still have evictions for long-term because we're still gonna have the problem. But we should be aware that the DNS is really 2 years in the future.
That's a good point. And I do think also you kind of bring up another point, which is that there may be other vehicles to say that that's a priority for us as well. Is it a resolution that calls on state electeds or federal electeds? It just doesn't necessarily have to be the DNS because the money for it's probably not coming from the city. So
Right.
Again, that's my 2 cents, but if other committee members feel differently.
So what we're looking for right now is somewhat long-term projects to put into the hopper.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but remember that there effectively are 2 district needs budget priority options. So you can ask for capital projects on one list and expense items on another list.
Right.
And then just while I have the floor for a second, many of the things that have been discussed tonight are things that very much are appropriate for our consideration as budget priorities. But it is a system-wide issue, and in some of the forums that we have conducted, we've learned that there is perhaps as much as $40 billion in deferred maintenance and other unattended to capital needs, and that is, you know, this is very much a part of that, but it is it's tricky to figure out how to get the needs of one development met when the whole system is down in a hole that big.
Yeah, that's a, you know, the unfortunate truth. It's sort of like an overwhelming and awful truth. So I guess my thinking was like, let's focus on, you know, smaller capital projects in our community district that maybe we could get funding to. But it's a valid point.
No, just a reality check, that's all.
Well, something that we could put in that we have been talking about, and that in this age of COVID are daycare centers and senior centers. And because this is where people get food, seniors get food, and they get some kind of quality of life support. And of course, everybody needs daycare centers.
But I think other committees are going to discuss that. I think, you know, I heard a fabulous webinar at Furman Center about 3 weeks ago about that preventing evictions prevents poverty. So I think if, you know, that might be something we want to look at. I don't know that we can put it in the DNS, but it might be something we want to look at. And that not only do you need to help the people that might be evicted, you also have to have the landlords who are badly affected by people not being able to pay their rent.
Can I,
right.
Can I say something for a second? Especially when it comes to the senior centers. I think it was the biggest mistake taking senior centers away from the residents and giving it to Wishfish. Most of my residents, my seniors that are right here in A68, they don't get what they need here. And they're constantly asking me to take over the senior center. It's not the same for the people in Douglas. When Wishfish is on 106th Street, and don't get me wrong, Mickey is beautiful. She does her job. I have nothing against it. I'm only speaking for the seniors in my development that find it, number one, very hard to keep going on 106th Street. Number two, when they have a senior center right here that is not being appropriately run, right? And there's but so much I can do about it. They should have left my senior center right under the TA president. So there's something that really needs to be looked at. I will be talking to somebody about how it's being run, and it's a lot. Most of the time, you know, I'm being asked for help. Wishfish is calling me to help them out. So what's the sense of me helping? You might as well just give me our senior center back.
I think you bring up a good point. Maybe there's some room for collaboration with, you know, our Health and Human Services Committee and with the tenant leaders to look at the social services being provided on site and sort of like what are the gaps and what are the management issues. And I think that could be something we definitely look at this year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll open the floor again one last time and say any other housing items, NYCHA or otherwise, that anyone in attendance, committee, non-committee, attendees, public, TA presidents wants us to consider including, please speak up.
This is Louisa. I lost my picture. I would like to bring up something that we've had previously, but it is about training residents of NYCHA to do repairs and have an apprentice program. And We've had it in the DNS before, but I think that it would be very, very valuable if we could actually get something like that.
So program funding, or is it more of like a DNS item?
Well, actually, community engagement is doing that, the REACE program.
The what program?
The REACE program, resident engagement, does all of that. They are actually, they do the, now actually they're doing the solar panel. I know they took it from me because I had a meeting with them. Next thing you know, when I mentioned that they had it up too, with the solar paneling that I was looking into making, doing some classes on it. And they do have the OSHA classes. Now it's no longer OSHA 30, but OSHA 40. So REACE has a lot of programs that they're initiating, and all that people have to do is reach out and do them.
Okay, so I
so
can.
you don't invent the wheel, right?
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Exactly. So one thing I want to talk about is recycling initiative. Okay, that's something that can be put into the DNS statement because it's important. Again, because of the COVID. But prior to COVID, we still have problems with garbage and rats, etc. So I would like to see something, discussed or put into the statement so that money could be set aside to improve recycling, because a lot of the garbage cans and trash cans really do not accommodate recycling. I know for the brownstones, Cynthia, definitely they need to change the trash disposal item, cyclable items that they're using, because they're not large enough. I like to see the large bins that kind of close from the top. They're like a rectangular shape and they're large. Right now, they're just using these plastic traditional garbage cans, and rats are all over the place getting into them. So we need something more secure. And also, doing the recycling as well. So we talked about that before at the different locations, but nothing has happened. So
Holly, can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
One of the things that I would think that we would want to advocate for as a holistic answer to this is not just recycling like bottles and cans, which is of course important, but what the Department of Sanitation refers to as organics recycling and what I call composting.
Yes.
Which is taking organic material out of the hard waste stream, which does a couple of things, not the least of which is isolates, and if we do it correctly, puts into a proper bin, and you're absolutely correct that there are different kinds of bins, so that when you put hard trash out on the street, which, let's face it, NYCHA has never been particularly good at doing in a safe way, you're not putting organics out so that when you put the trash out the night before, you're not feeding a street full of rats. This comes up actually, oddly enough, in the Parks Committee, because the rats live in the park, but they eat on the side streets. And so the cutting of the funding for what I call composting is actually, or curbside organic recycling, ought to be part of what I understand you to be advocating for, because if we simply just improve the container, we will continue to attract the rats. They'll just make their lives a little harder. I'm all for that, but why not go all the way to a solution that would put them in a different place? It is, by the way, a district-wide issue and not just a NYCHA issue. But considering the issues that NYCHA has with getting trash to the street in a responsible way, it would be a smart thing to highlight in the housing as well as in the environmental sections of our DNS.
This is a much bigger discussion here than housing. I'm not sure where it belongs, because how we handle our waste stream, it has many, many problems. And maybe there's a committee or group of committees that we could talk about it, because you also have a problem. When they did do the organics up until a few months ago, it was 1 day a week. So that basically you're shifting all the organics now inside the buildings where people live. So that didn't work very well either. And there's all sorts of, they do collections of clothing, they do collections of electronics, but that only work, they only run that in very large buildings. So there's a whole other issue here. Maybe a future meeting is to have sanitation come and explain their recycling programs to us when they're fully functioning. Because there are a bunch of them that we don't know about that would really help everybody, and not just this group of housing or that group of housing, but really housing in general. Mark it down for the fall.
Agree, it's a bigger issue. Happy to think through like a collaborative committee arrangement to explore it further. For the purpose of the DNS and district and budget priorities, I think it could be like a more universal ask that like multiple committees agree on. And
yeah, but that's important though, the composting.
Yeah, we can put it forward, and we can say like prioritize NYCHA for the implementation.
That'd be great, because I'm starting a new garden. That'd be awesome.
I mean, certainly the brownstones are a really good place to try out more innovative ideas on things like clothing recycling, electronics recycling, because you can also talk about repurposing rather than recycling. Repurposing is actually a preferable option to recycling.
Sorry, I'm just gonna reply to Larry. He just said something in the chat to return to the like debate over whether we should be saying something about like rental assistance and eviction prevention assistance. Larry points out there's a number of new bills in Albany to cancel rent or one shots to pay arrears, new rent subsidy programs to small landlords, and a resolution to support would be helpful. Also, Congress hasn't moved the $500 billion stimulus bill or rent relief piece of the bill. I'm fine adding this to our list come fall. We had someone speak to us about the cancel rent campaign, I think last month, and I was honestly not convinced fully that like the implementation was sort of worked through, but I think it is something that we should revisit and not just, have heard about once and leave by the wayside. So I'm definitely game for talking about it in September, October.
Listen, I'm sorry, I have to go. I have another Zoom meeting. I appreciate it. If you can get me, if you need my help on any committee, I'm willing to join any committee when it comes to housing. Anything you need, I'm here. And Mark, I wanted to thank you for coming to Douglas and helping us out with your injured hand. You are a trooper. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Carmen, before you go, one of the things that I was, one of the things that, well, this is a whole nother conversation, I'm sorry. The long story short is there are an amazing group of volunteers all over the place, and I was privileged to watch a few of them in action. The city is spending billions upon billions of dollars to put food in the hands of people who need it, and that's exactly what the city should be doing. The amazing part to me is that the last step, the last 25 yards of that process involves volunteers. And so I don't know what happens in those places where the folks have day jobs and can't be there when the truck pulls up, but it's a pretty amazing thing to see in action. And so props to everybody who's involved in it and everybody who's, there are different ways it's being done at different facilities, everybody up and down the district, but it is really a humbling thing to see in action.
Thank you so much. God bless, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Okay, unless there's further comments on the district needed budget statement, I'm going to move us to agenda planning.
Well, it sounds like you got a pretty good start on that already, huh?
Yeah, okay. Just for next steps on this, I think maybe Louisa, Mark and I, we can like trade an email just where we bullet out everything we heard, like all of the potential needs that we heard tonight. And then we can, one of us, you or I, Louisa, should take the first attempt at putting it into the narrative and the format we normally use.
Great.
Okay, cool. Okay, agendas. Yeah, we did sort of get a jump on that.
So one of the things that we heard was the interplay between NYCHA and what I'll call the collegiate money. I think is what we're all been calling it. And that is a worthy agenda topic, both because it's important and because we really, as Melissa said, need a bit of research and some answers from people in either elected or agency positions to tell us what the limits and opportunities are there.
Yeah.
just to refresh everybody, if you remember back to when that happened, HPD was going to give us a report at one point.
They did give us a report at one point, but it would be a good time to have
At a
another
second
one.
point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't her,
And just so you know, I planted a seed with a number of folks, not the least of whom is Gail Brewer, who also wants to make sure that that money, A, is spent, B, spent wisely, and C, spent in our district.
Good.
And I think that you also want to touch base with Shelley, because with respect to the collegiate money and Independence House, some of that money was earmarked for.
That's right.
So that's true. And so when you sit down with Shelley and go over and review all of this, you get some clarity on this.
I will.
Okay, thank you, Robert, because that's not my understanding. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Roberta.
And no, for a fact.
To clarify, that money has to be spent in CD7. And we are due for another report from HPD as to where the money is. But we'll find out what the restrictions are on it. And I'm pretty sure that they don't include night shift because it's existing housing, not new housing. And it has to be for new housing because we were supposed to get additional housing. We're supposed to get additional affordable housing in the community, not repairing existing housing. But we will clarify it for everybody.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that. So just as I had mentioned, and Larry brought up, revisiting like eviction prevention in the wake of COVID, especially since this crisis is not really waning, I can add that to the list.
Mhm. Yeah, waste management, I'm not sure that that really comes under housing. That's the problem.
I mean, again, I'm happy for us to put it up as like a DNS item, as when it comes to like holding a meeting and asking DS and why, I tend to agree that like in terms of the how we do it is not under us, but asking for it to be done better at NYCHA is. Yeah, Robert?
On upcoming agenda items, I think we could follow up on the point that Quinones was making with respect to the senior center at Douglas, because Health and Human Services, and this is another point I think to collaborate as you had requested, because we did address that as a committee. And we arranged the meeting with, and Sally is the one who represented the committee in a meeting in a special inspection by the commissioner's office, NYCHA commission, of the senior center at Douglas. And they did a walkthrough and so on. And the unreasonable conclusion, at least impressionistic to me, was that send your seniors over to 106th Street, which it didn't make any sense at the time. And from what I'm hearing tonight, it wasn't workable anyway. So that I think that we might do a follow-up on that. And in the long term, and I appreciate Luisa's caution that we're talking for 2022, that we could make a statement in the short term, but also in preparation for the reacquisition of the senior center at Douglas, which can take a little time because there were spatial issues. And the reason that we had the meeting to begin with is when Janora Johnson was on the board and she was reporting all kinds of flooding. I mean, just this disgusting, there were pictures and everything, disgusting situation at that senior center especially in the feeding area, the dining area, and that, was uninhabitable or unoccupiable, but yet that's what the seniors had. And that's sheer insanity. So I don't think we have to tolerate that. We can have plenty of say on that. And I think that, because I'm on Human Services as well, as you know, so this is a joint committee on that particular item. So I think that
yeah, I think that's
with Catherine and Shelley, work with both of them.
I'm happy to do a joint meeting, and Mark, let me know if it's best that I reach out and initiate that and gauge interest, or if you would prefer to.
I'm happy for you to speak directly. I'm here as a resource if you need me.
Cool, thanks. Other topics that were mentioned tonight you want to talk about at a future meeting or not yet mentioned?
Just let me reiterate that when I said the short term, the immediate, which you had requested, we could find out what the shortfall is there with respect to that Douglas Senior Center.
Yeah.
And if it's $50,000 or $100,000, whatever, we can put that, we can ask for that immediately. And then down the line, you know, because the amount of space was also an issue there. So we could do a nice job there, I think.
My only concern is that if we ask for it this year without like getting more information about like what the needs are and like what it would take to get it reopened, like NYCHA's agency response will just be, you know, that is not a location that we are operating at this time, or, you know, just something very basic to shut it down. But
your judgment. So you use your best judgment on that. I think your judgment is good. So it's a good point.
I mean, happy to explore it and also to include it this year and next year. Maybe this year it gets restricted, next year it's more realistic.
Okay, your call.
Other top of mind items for discussion in November and December, January, very far off.
Just follow up by email.
I don't know, Polly, I really want to see that virtual thing going. So that's a long-term project. And if you had money, you know, and if it's not as costly as one would think, that should be an item that we should work on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah,
that is the answer. That is the answer.
Okay. We can obviously pick this up again in September and do more planning. It might be easier when we're not looking right at the summer. But unless anyone else has new business they want to discuss, I think I might ask us to adjourn. Roberta, are you waving or moving your camera?
I think she's waving goodbye.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thank you all. This is really helpful, and especially to all the tenants.
Good. Yeah, it's good to see them here.
Yeah. Let's make it a habit.
And if anybody has any ideas, just send them out.
Yes. Send them
We
to
don't
Mar-
have to
Will
wait
do.
till September.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you all.